For the first time, I broke down and cried in front of my kids, talked about how scared I was and worried I was. On the one hand, it felt good. On the other hand, it just kind of felt weird. I'm still supposed to be the one who's protecting them.
That's Steve Mallouk, a father, husband, and former BCG consultant. Steve is a vibrant force of nature who likes cycling, surfing, and hiking. But a brain tumor in his early 50s made him rethink it all.
I was really trying to define myself through how I thought other people looked at me, as opposed to looking deeply inside myself and saying, am I happy? And, I was a partner at BCG. Like, I suspect most partners, most people who work there, insecure overachievers.
Now look, we all make sacrifices for our career. And Steve's story is a powerful reminder that putting aside our health, our relationships, and our passions is a risky strategy. In this conversation, we discuss how Steve redefined his version of financial enough, how many of his successful peers are deeply unhappy and scared about an uncertain future, and how the vulnerability that he once saw as a weakness has enabled him to deepen his connections and relationships. Let's jump in. Steve, I wanted you to set the stage for us where you got some news that there was something in your brain, something that should have been there. Set the stage for us. Where were you? Who were you with? When was this? What were you wearing? What were you eating when you found out that news?
So about 2 years ago, our family, I have a daughter who's now 23 and a son who's now 18. But about 2 years ago, we took a family vacation over, I think it was February, April, spring break, to Japan. And while we were there, I started to notice like the hearing in my right ear was a little bit diminished, and I was starting to hear some ringing. So I go to Google and I look into it, and it says, hey, if you're a man in your 50s and you've got ringing in your ears and you've been to a lot of rock concerts and you go to a lot of loud sporting events, it's pretty natural. So told my wife I'm probably just getting old. She encouraged me as we got back home to go see my doctor. I went to go see my doctor. She recommended I go see an ear, nose, and throat specialist who I went to. They did an auditory exam on me, said, yep, the hearing in your right ear is definitely diminished. 1 in 1,000 people with this circumstance at your age has a tumor. We're going to send you to get an MRI to make sure that you're not one of those one people. So I went for an MRI. I'm thinking 1 in 1,000 are pretty good odds. I should be fine. And it was probably May or June of that year. This would be 23. I went in and they said, you have a tumor that's growing behind your right ear. I don't remember what I was wearing. I just remember I gripped the handles of the chair that I was in, and my head started spinning a little bit. I got a bit lightheaded. And then the next thing they said was, fortunately, it's benign. We've seen these before. So you don't have cancer. So that took a little bit of the immediate fear away. But then over the course of the next month and a half, they wanted me to see a set of additional specialists. And the specialists basically said, look, it was called a vestibular schwannoma. So it's a benign tumor that was growing on my auditory nerve and on my balance or vestibular nerve right behind my right eardrum. And they said, a bunch of people have it. Normally it grows slow. Typically what we do is we take an MRI every 6 months. And if this continues to grow really slowly, maybe we never have to go in and do surgery. If we have to do surgery, you're going to lose the hearing in your right ear. And I was like, oh, shit. This is not what I expected as I was getting kind of into my early to mid 50s. So we went down a path where I didn't tell many people about it. And every 6 months I'd go back in and I would get an MRI done, and it was growing slowly. My hearing continued to go down. So in early 2024, I got a hearing aid that I started to wear on my right ear so that I could hear more effectively. We started to notice my balance was going down. So if my wife and I were out hiking, and we love hiking, if she was walking behind me, she would notice that I'd start to walk in a bit of a zigzaggy line. I couldn't walk a straight line. I used to joke about a year ago that if I was ever pulled over at 10 o'clock at night by the police and asked to walk a straight line, I'd probably get a DUI ticket, even if I hadn't had anything to drink, because my balance wasn't that great. I would zigzag. Um, and then in October of 2024, so a couple months ago, I had another MRI. I was on a glide path where I thought, okay, I'm going to ski a bunch this year. I just bought an Icon pass. I had all these plans for things I was going to do. And my doctors came back and said, it's grown enough that we think we need to go in now and take it out, because if it grows much more, and it's growing faster than we like, if it grows much more, we're going to have real issues around possible side effects. And that's when it became even more real for me. All the plans I've had for this winter, and it's the first winter that I haven't been working. So I was really looking forward to getting like 25 days on the slopes and doing a bunch of additional travel. All that kind of went up in smoke pretty quickly. And it became, okay, go get a second opinion, find the best doctors, start to prepare myself. And it was preparing on a couple of dimensions. One of them was getting comfortable, or trying to get comfortable with what the potential side effects might be. There was a good chance I would lose all the hearing in my right ear. There was a chance that when they went in and took the tumor out, my balance would be impacted badly enough that I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things I love to do for some period of time, or potentially forever. And there was a possibility that the facial nerve that controls kind of the muscles on the right side of my face would be impacted, so that it would look like I had a stroke if I went out in public. And all of those things I was trying to get to grips with. And I would say some days I did a better job of trying to get to grips with it. And some days I ignored it and just said, I'm going to live the best life I possibly can before I have to go and get surgery and see what happens.
Yeah. Might pause you there. Thank you for sharing that. I'll share that I've been feeling being 45 this month. Had my TMI mandatory, recommended colonoscopy. And again, these are like such routine things, but you're just kind of there. And I'll speak for myself, where I'm just like, okay, like everything's starting to break.
Yes.
There's always that like non-zero chance that, and the colonoscopy is pretty standard. There's that non-zero chance that, something gets discovered. Today, actually, I got back. I have like an elevated red blood cell count and hematocrit. And it's like just out of the like normal zone. I'm like, oh God, like I have a bone marrow thing. And so I say that because just the uncertainty of aging, you strike me as someone who has always lived a healthy lifestyle, fit lifestyle, and so the uncertainty of like, this is changing. This might change forever. In a lifestyle sense, like, I might not be able to ski or bike.
Yep.
Or this might change in a more even extreme way beyond lifestyle of some, consequence. I personally find that so terrifying and debilitating to the point that I've probably been bracing for these types of moments since I was like a young adult, maybe even a teenager. And so I'm curious, what was your relationship with your own mortality kind of before all this?
Hey, quick time out. If you're watching this video, you're probably someone who thinks deeply and intentionally about your career, about your life, and about your relationships. But sometimes you might find yourself in a place feeling stuck, unmotivated, or just rudderless. If that's you, we have a coaching program for people looking to make a bold pivot and rediscover their aliveness. Just check out radreads.co/coaching. Now back to the video.
It's a great question. And I hope, by the way, that you continue to get news that is you're healthy and that you don't have to face these types of things. Look, my 20s, 30s, and even my 40s, I probably acted like many other men out there, many other people. I acted like I was immortal, that no matter what I did to my body, I would always be able to do whatever the hell I wanted to do, whenever the hell I wanted to do it. Whether I took good care of myself, which at various points I did, or when I wasn't taking good care of myself and getting out of weight and out of shape, I was like, well, all I have to do is recommit and I'll get back into shape and I'll be able to do all the things I really want to do. Prior to my brain tumor, I started to have some serious issues with both of my knees where I had really bad arthritis in both of my knees. I couldn't run, couldn't play tennis, couldn't play pickleball, couldn't play basketball. You know, skiing became a real chore. I had these two really big braces on my knees. I would load up on Advil before I went on the hill. I would load up on Advil after I came off the hill, but I'd feel good about it. And I needed knee replacement surgery, but I never got it because my job required me to fly basically every week somewhere. And I chose to keep doing my job as opposed to fix my knees. And there was a restructuring when I was at Visa. My job ended. My last day on the job was September 31st. And on October 6th, I got my left knee replaced. And that was the first time in my life where I started to prioritize my health and my well-being over my career.
You're late 40s? 50?
I'm 54 today. This was probably, I was 52 at that point in time.
Wait, today's your birthday?
No, my birthday was this year. I'm 54.
Oh, God. I was like, oh, that would be cool.
I wouldn't talk to you on my birthday. Come on.
And when you got knee surgery, it was like in your early 50s? That moment?
I was 52, I think, when I had the knee surgery done. And I did all the physical therapy that I needed to do. And I was able within 6 months to get back to doing a whole bunch of things that I hadn't been able to do without any pain. And by focusing on doing the right exercises and having done the surgery and not flying everywhere for work, like suddenly I was able, even the knee that wasn't replaced got a lot better. So from a mortality perspective, getting back to your original question, like that experience taught me that it's not just how many years I've got left on the planet. It's what can I do with the years I have left on the planet? Can I do the things I really enjoy doing?
Yeah.
And then with the brain tumor, it became, again, both of those things. There was a slight chance that I would die, but I had really great surgeons. So I was a little bit less concerned that I wouldn't come back, although I won't say I wasn't afraid when they put me under. Like when I said goodbye to my wife and kids that morning, there was a part of me that said, I hope this isn't the end. I hope this isn't the final goodbye. But what was really going through my head was, I'm 54. What's the quality of life I want to have in the years that I have left? And I've always had these dreams that said, when I retire, I want to ski, I want to heli-ski, I want to bike, I want to travel, I want to hike, I want to like all these outdoor adventures that I wanted to do and that make me feel alive. They bring joy to my life. And then spending time with my wife and friends in really great ways brings joy to my life. And I was suddenly looking at a scenario where physically I might not be able to do all the things I wanted to do if my balance wasn't there. And emotionally or pride-wise, if my face was drooping, like I was nervous if I'd even want to go out in public and if people would see me the same way or if they would look differently at me. And it just really brought this notion of, have I lived my life as fully as I want to? Or are there other things I really want to do before I can't do those things anymore? And it was just this really stark realization around, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? And that, so for me, mortality came down to not just will I be here, but what will I be able to do to enjoy life in the remaining time I have?
And if we had asked, I don't know, I'm 45, so let's pick 45-year-old Steve, and you ask that question, maybe your knee is acting up a bit, but have I lived my life fully? I forget exactly how you said it. If we had asked you know, 45-year-old Steve that question, how would he have answered?
45-year-old Steve was running the rat race. So I would have said, I haven't made enough money yet. I would have looked around me and looked at the cars that other people drove and the houses other people lived in and said, I need to be able to make sure that I can afford that. And I hit a number that I can retire on so I can do all the things I love. But it was much more focused, number one, on the number. Number two, it was focused on my career. Like, had I gone as far in my career as I could, you know, was I a senior partner if I was going to stay in consulting, or was I a CEO of a company if I was going to move over onto the company side? Like, you know, I was very ambitious, I had high aspirations, I kept wanting to move up. And I wanted everybody around me, whether it was in the company I worked in or the community I lived in, to kind of look at me, look at the family situation I was in, and say, wow, he's made it. Like, I was really trying to define myself through how I thought other people looked at me, as opposed to looking deeply inside myself and saying, am I happy? And, you know, I was a partner at BCG. Like, I suspect most partners, most people who work there are insecure overachievers, because that's what I was. So we were always looking around us and saying, how do I do better? I live in Bellevue, Washington. You know, Microsoft and Amazon, people live all around me, and I suspect a lot of them are insecure overachievers. Like, the culture I live in, the culture many of us live in, is
Same here,
surrounded by that mentality. And on the one hand, it's a great motivator to work really hard and keep trying to do better. And on the other hand, it was a great way for me to ignore what matters to me and focus on things of, you know, focus on the rat race.
Yeah. So much of what you said is relatable, both at a personal level and I know with many of our listeners. Do you think that if the initial MRI, the hearing that led to that first, like before you knew you had to have surgery, if that part of your life had never happened and you were just continuing on the trajectory, maybe, you know, with like some aging knees, but the brain stuff was just kind of wiped from the future, where do you think you would be today?
There's a good chance I'd be running a startup that I was trying to get up and running about 12 months ago. And, you know, like most startups, you get lots of doors slammed in your face. People will say, yeah, great idea. Come back in 2 years when you've got some more results and we'll talk about funding. I had 60 doors slammed in my face. I probably would have continued to try to make that work and find ways to make that work if that hadn't coincided with a bunch of trips that my wife and I took, where for once in my life I decided, you know, we spent 2 weeks in Costa Rica last January in the middle of fundraising. I said, you know what, I'm not going to do phone calls and I'm not going to look at my phone and check emails every morning while we're down here. Like, I'm actually going to take a vacation, which I'd never done on any vacation prior to that. No matter what job I was doing, like, I'd wake up, I'd look at my phone. I wouldn't relax over breakfast. I'd feel the stress of all the things that were going on back in the office. We took a trip to Korea and I did the same thing. And then another trip with my son to check out colleges in Arizona. And I just found I loved how relaxed I felt and how present I was with my wife and my son if I wasn't constantly looking at my phone. And this, you know, I was 53 and this thought kept going through my head, which was, I could probably pour the next 7 to 10 years of my life into trying to build a startup. Maybe it works and I have a whole bunch of money. Maybe it doesn't work and I don't have a whole bunch of money. And where will I be? I'll be at 60 to 63 years old. I will have killed myself trying to build something. I probably will have ignored my health and my family. I will, at 60 to 63, be able to start to focus on the things that I really want to focus on, like being outdoors and having fun and spending more time with family and friends. And we ended up sitting down with our financial advisor and saying, okay, I've done well. I probably haven't done as well as I thought I could do, but I've done well. Like, if I don't work another day for the rest of my life, what happens? And we ran a bunch of scenarios and we came back and we said, okay, so this is the budget that we'd have to live on. Can we live on that? And my wife and I went back and looked at it and we're like, yeah, we could stay in our house and we can have nice cars and we can travel a bunch, and maybe we're not flying first class. Maybe we're, flying still comfortable, like not at the back of the bus. Maybe we're not staying in the Four Seasons, but we're still staying in pretty nice places.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. And guess what? If I don't have to work, think about all the other things we get to do. And I think that knowing I had the tumor in my brain, even though I didn't know I needed surgery yet, like I think that and the knees had really started to bring home to me this notion of mortality and quality of life. And just this idea that said, if I work another 7 to 10 years, even if I make millions of dollars, okay, great. I can buy a house in Costa Rica. I can buy a condo in Whistler. I could Airbnb those places today and not put 7 to 10 years of my life into trying to get to owning assets all around the world. Like, and just given everything that was going on in my life, I just felt it was time to reprioritize.
Yeah. Beautiful. What was, I'm curious, you don't have to give the numbers themselves, but the number in your bank account at the time you had the conversation with your financial advisor relative to the one you had in your head, which I presume moved a bunch over time, but were they close or was the gap like pretty significant? And again, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
20 years ago, the number was half, if not less than half, of what it now was, of what it now is. And in my mind, I was kind of 2/3 of the way to where I needed to be. But the number the number kept growing. No matter how much money I made, the number kept growing because the lifestyle I wanted, if I looked around and saw what other people had, the lifestyle kept growing. And, I spent a lot of time this summer on long bike rides, sometimes on my own, sometimes with other people. And they become very meditative. And I did this deep contemplation over a couple of bike rides where I focused on what's the definition of enough. And historically, I defined enough as, is there enough money in the bank account to live the life I want to live? And I reframed it over these multiple hours to, have I spent enough time like really focusing on my wife and my marriage and making it as good as it could be? No, I haven't. Have I visited enough national parks and done enough epic bike rides? No, I haven't. Have I skied enough great hills? No, I haven't. Have I really gone off and done great road trips with my kids or spent like real quality time one-on-one doing cool things with my kids? No, I haven't. Have I done enough? Have I seen enough cool places of the world? No. Have I done enough deep connection with friends? Even if they're friends I haven't seen in 15 or 20 years, like, have I really sat down and deeply connected with them in a way that changes how each of us see ourselves, each other, and the world? No, I haven't. And then I started to think about, well, what gives me joy? Like, most of those things that aren't the number didn't require a lot of money. They required time and emphasis and focus. And I decided that I had enough money to be able to allow me to focus on those other things for the next however many years I'm going to live. I could always want more money. I could always use more money. I don't think I need more at this point in time. I think I want to focus on those other aspects of enough.
I think about that often, and the things I like doing, I like surfing, I like going on walks, I like hanging out with my friends, I listen to music, a lot of music, I read, I meditate 40 to an hour a day. I'm like,
Yep.
besides my kids go to public, it's priced into the market of where they go, but my kids go to a public school. I think about, besides like where I choose to live, which obviously is a very high cost of living place.
Yep.
There's not much stuff. The things that bring me happiness don't cost that much. And if I can get myself if I can pay for the place that enables all these things, which I can, then I'm pretty good. And so, but it is a strange thing, because even now I'll share, I call it the number go up syndrome.
Yes.
Where like, I just want it to go up. It's like, it's like any metric, like your bench press, you want it to go up. But like, if my bench press stayed flat for the rest of my life, who cares? Right? Like nothing, like it doesn't change anything about my life other than some like internal narrative that I have about this need for progress, or this need for a number. And so I'm relaying back that I feel that tension even 10 years removed. And I've been in a weird situation because I haven't made much money over the past decade, like basically took a 90% pay cut, but I had kind of ran that enough calculation. Mine was a little bit different, where I'm like, I think I can make this amount by only doing things I like doing, and then kind of like worked backwards from there, which I suspect that you probably might land at a place like that. I mean, you strike me as someone who has a lot of ideas, huge network, people like you're in the mix of things where you could be like, oh, I like doing this activity, very ring fenced, like no travel, no weekends, no this, no that. And I'm sure it could give you income. And then to me, it's like house money, so to speak. You're like, well, I was going to do this thing anyway.
Yeah. And
and so,
yes. So just a couple of things. I still wake up every morning and I go to the site that aggregates all my finances and look at the number. And I feel better if it's gone up, and I feel a little more nervous if it's gone down. Like that, that hasn't changed. And that may never change until I die. Like there's still a fixation on like, how are we doing there?
Yep.
The notion of making money going forward, I think about that. But the big thing that's changed for me is I'm not focused on how much money I can make on the things I do. I'm focused on how does it make me feel, and does it help people I like, or does it help the world be a better place? And by the way, if there's money associated with that, that's great. That's gravy.
Yeah.
And what's crazy about it is, like, I'm helping a couple friends who are trying to get startups going. And 10 years ago, like early on, I'd be like, okay, so what's the advisor fee? Like, am I going to get some equity in this? And now I'm like, you know what, guys? Whatever you think makes sense, like, it's fine. I'm not doing it to make money. I'm doing it to help you guys out.
Yeah.
And there's other things that are coming up, which maybe I can make money at them. Maybe I can't, but I'm not focused first and foremost on how much money I can make. I'm focused first and foremost on, like, is it making a positive impact on the world and on the people I'm helping? And do I feel good about myself doing it? And if so, and money comes with it, it's worth the time.
Totally.
If the money doesn't come with it, but the other two are true, it's still worth the time.
Yeah. I fully agree on the checking thing. So I think I've shared this on the podcast, so I'll say quickly. I have that thing of checking, and I used to check quarterly. And I have enough, my investment situation is like pretty simple, but I just have like money in enough different places that's just outside of the realm of possibility for mental math. So I can't just like add it all up, just because there's just too many variables, just too many. And so I would check quarterly. I would kind of go to the, look at a few private investments, look at, crypto, this and that, add it all up. And then I was like, I'm just not going to check anymore. I decided I'm just not going to check. And about 70%, maybe 80% of my wealth is in the S&P 500. So
Yep.
I generally know how it's going.
Yep.
And something I might just put forth for you is maybe not, and I've had to check because I was going to make a bigger financial decision related to college stuff. So I had to know like what the number was recently. And also I knew that it was going to be much higher than it was the last time I checked. So I'm like, okay, this is a good time to go in.
Yeah.
But I also know, like I have one credit card, so I roughly know my monthly spending. My rent is cash. It's, and so what I've done is I basically kind of know intuitively if we're anywhere near like a problematic state. And then I have like fully surrendered that I'm like, I'm good, and I'm in a little different situation in that I still make money. And so I try to make money still. I'm convinced you will make money. It's just going to find you.
Yep.
But I have, I can turn my money making dial, I can turn the volume up or down, based on my activity. So I have that comfort, but I'll tell you, it's pretty uncomfortable. I probably went maybe 18 months without checking. We were in a bull market, so
Yeah.
I knew that it was higher than the last time I checked. But might be something, I do this with I recommend this to some of my coaching clients, where you just slow down the pace of checking. And then you start to realize, oh, like nothing changed, right? Like with my red blood cell count today, I was nervous. And then there was like a 5-week window between the appointment and the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And then it turned out it was a nothing burger, just like some odd genetic trait that really probably doesn't mean anything. Yep. And so that 5 weeks of brain damage could have been, you could have just wiped the slate clean. And
so much more productive stuff you could have done with that time and that mental energy. Yes.
So anyway, we don't have to dwell on that, but that even for our listeners, like I know many of our listeners check daily, like slow the pace down and you'll realize like nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then you'll buy yourself a lot of mental freedom.
It's actually a good idea. I may give a shot to you.
In the in-between phase. And then you can go, I'm a man of extremes. You could be like, I'm not checking for the rest of my life. Right.
Let me see if I can go a week without checking.
Exactly. Okay. So take us back. So what a beautiful setup. And what I've heard is that kind of the whisper, it wasn't, you weren't told you had to have surgery. It wasn't growing yet. Might have played some factor in kind of the conversation with a financial advisor of like, okay, well, let's really take stock here. To slow down. And so then you have surgery. So we're recording in February of 25. You have surgery in December of 24.
Yeah, my surgery was the morning of December 26th. So I celebrated Christmas with the family.
Wow.
Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with my kids. They both came home. We limited Christmas this year to just the four of us. Yeah. And my wife is very good at trying to draw out everybody's emotions, which wouldn't have worked if other people had been there.
Mm-hmm.
So we all talked at Christmas Eve and Christmas Day just about how we felt about my surgery coming up, and everyone around the table dealt with it differently.
Yeah.
But for the first time, like on Christmas night over dinner, I broke down and cried in front of my kids, talked about how scared I was and worried I was. And then we woke up on the 26th. And they drove me to the hospital and, had them all goodbye. And I was crying and my wife was crying. My daughter was crying. My son was like, "You'll be fine."
And did you know when you were going to see them? Like, was it like that evening or the next day? Or
so the plan was I was supposed to go into surgery in the morning. It was about an 8-hour surgery. And I was supposed to come out around 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. I'm a huge Seattle Seahawks fan. It was a Seahawks game that was on. And I was joking with everybody that I wanted to come out and turn the game on. My surgery was a little bit delayed, so I didn't go in until about noon. I didn't come out until about 10 o'clock at night. And my son and my wife, I think, came by that night. I was so drugged up. But when I came out and they walked in, I'm like, "Did I miss the game?" And they were like,
Yeah.
they said yes. And I was trying to ask who won. I said, don't tell me. I want to watch the game separately. But yeah, so I saw them at 10 o'clock at night. And I had not told most people that I was going in for surgery because I tended to keep stuff like that pretty private. I told maybe 6 or 7 people in passing in the month beforehand that I was going to be going in, maybe 10. And I just decided on Christmas Day that I was going to post something on social media. I put out there a post that I put on Facebook and LinkedIn that said, my wish this Christmas was more the gift of life or something along those lines. And I just, for the first time, didn't focus on like posting beautiful pictures of the place that I was visiting. I talked about the fear I had of the surgery and what I was afraid I would lose and what I really wanted out of the next 20, 30 years of my life. And from about 10 minutes after I dropped that message, all the way through the next morning while I was waiting to get my surgery, I had hundreds of people, not just clicking like, but sending me messages on the platform, wishing me good luck, but separately sending me separate messages privately saying, thank you for like being so vulnerable and open about what you're going through. Like, I want to know if there's anything I could do. I had people calling me on Christmas Day who I hadn't spoken to in months, just to say like they wished it would go well. And I remember on the morning of the 26th, I had my iPad with me while I was waiting the extra couple of hours, and messages, kept coming in. And I was literally crying as I saw all these people around the world just sending me positive thoughts and positive vibes and saying they hope things would go well.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible. It was one of the first times I put out a really vulnerable, authentic message broadly.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't believe the response.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we're connected. It was through a subsequent message of that I felt as well. I want to go back to that, you breaking down in front of your kids. Like, as a father, I'm always thinking my kids are younger. They're 11 and 10 and 7. But I'm always thinking about, my parents were immigrants, strict kind of, don't show any emotion to your kids or just don't show emotion, period. What was your kind of mindset as a father of like, how much do I let my kids and or even my spouse, my wife, into my fears, my insecurities, my confusions, my apprehensions, leading up to that dinner conversation?
It's a great question. Part of me in the lead up to that did not want my kids to worry. So I told both of them that I needed to go get the surgery, but I was trying to minimize the negative points of what could happen. And I was trying to show up as being strong and confident because I didn't want them to be scared. My daughter came to me probably a month before the surgery, and just said, can you send me a bunch of information about what your tumor is and what they're going to do? I'd like to read up on it. And I knew that my sense was she was worried and scared. I didn't want them to worry, so I tried really hard not to show anything. In the week running up to the surgery, I would find myself, cooking in the kitchen or making a coffee, and suddenly nobody was around. I just have tears streaming down my face. Not something I'm accustomed to doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And once or twice, my wife would come into the kitchen and she'd say, what's wrong? And I just say, I'm sad. Like, I think I'm scared. I think I'm worried about this surgery.
Yeah.
And I was trying to be stoic. I was trying not to show a lot of emotion. And then that night over Christmas dinner, when I did break down and started crying, I felt kind of two different emotions. One of them was I'm being open, I'm being authentic, I'm generally showing my kids how I feel.
Yeah.
And that felt right. And on the other side, I felt I don't want people, like, I don't want my kids to be scared for me. I'm
Yeah.
still the father. I'm still supposed to be the one who's
Yeah.
protecting them. And on the one hand, it felt good. On the other hand, it just kind of felt weird.
Yeah. I can
But
I can imagine. I mean, I never really cried in front of anyone until probably I can't even. There might have been like or a few funerals, obviously, um, but then when my father-in-law passed away somewhat abruptly about 18 months ago, I was like completely. I mean, we all were devastated, and it was the first time that I had let my kids into like like you're not supposed to say it, but negative emotions or problematic emotions. It was the first time I had like shown them, but not only shown them, but like invited them, like just be like, I'm not in control of this.
yeah,
Right. Like this thing controls me. I'm not controlling it. Not exactly in those words, but again, I'm not giving advice or commentary. I'm just sharing one person's opinion. I'm like, it hit me after that. I'm like, I want my kids to know that I feel all the emotions, right? And it doesn't take away, my situation is a little bit different than yours because like there wasn't I wasn't protecting them from something, some series of thoughts that they might have. So I recognize the difference. But and my wife is phenomenal at this. I mean, she's taught me a lot to like how to feel. They're like, there's
yeah.
a joke in my family that like I'm a robot. And so my wife and now through extension, my kids have taught me to feel. But I'm so glad that you're sharing this because I know so many men are listening to this and no one, their loved ones have never seen them cry. Right.
It's very
And
true. We're trained not to show
yep,
emotion, or we're trained not to show weakness,
yep, yep,
and crying denotes weakness.
yeah,
And I've gotten better at it.
yeah,
Similar
yeah.
to your wife, like my wife is really good at this stuff,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and has evolved me to be better at it. But it's still hard to do. And I found through this process, I think over the last 5 to 7 years, I've changed my perspective on a few things. And it's not just the tumor and the knees, it's other stuff, kind of this journey through life I've been on. I used to think that vulnerability denoted weakness, that crying denoted weakness in men. And I've kind of evolved that to think vulnerability actually is one of the strongest. It requires some of the most courage and strength
Yep.
that you can have in this society to kind of show up and be open and vulnerable and authentic. And every time I've tried to be a little more vulnerable, a little more authentic, every time I've taken the risk to do that, maybe it's over a coffee or a phone call or a conversation over dinner or something like that, it's been hard, it's taken courage, and it's actually driven tremendous positive outcomes on the other side.
Yeah.
Deeper conversations, better connections, whatnot. So I kind of know that being more open and vulnerable is a good thing. It doesn't mean it's an easy thing.
Yeah.
It gets a little easier to do over time. It's still fucking hard, man.
No, absolutely. And with kids and business peers and so on, like the early days, and this is a different level of vulnerability, but the early days of RadReads and me leaving Wall Street, I was basically just writing these essays into the void of kind of some of the questions that you were wrestling with, before the diagnosis. It's like, is this the point? What's enough? And I'd find out later that there were people, friends / peers, not like Nate level friends, Nate like being one of my best friends, but for friendly peers that had these like group chats they'd like share what I had wrote, and then someone would say, should we stage an intervention? Because like I was being too publicly vulnerable in case I needed to go back into industry.
Right.
And it's just so funny to think about. And I agree. I mean, I'm living proof. I mean, I'm someone who was like steel trap on emotions up until I left at 35. And I started to dribble it out. And then over the years, this podcast, my writing, the book I'm working on, it's just like a full blown, deluge of what am I really feeling. And so many great things have happened as a result of that. But more importantly, it's an invitation to others that they have permission to be vulnerable
agree.
too. And that's what I as an outsider looking in and hearing you talk, that's what the flood of responses you've gotten is, because you've given this like pretty wide group of people permission to express these things, share these things, feel these things that no one gave them permission before.
And I couldn't agree more with you. Like, I've had in the last 3 weeks conversations, coffees, lunches, dinners, some with people I see regularly, but at a much deeper level.
Yeah.
One was with a client I hadn't spoken to in 20 years who read one of my LinkedIn posts and said, I'm going to be in Bellevue. Can we have lunch? We just had this incredibly open, vulnerable conversation about like life and death and mortality that lasted for 2 hours. And it was deeply connective. But you used a great term there, which was permission. And I actually think that if I'm vulnerable in a noticeable way, it gives permission to somebody on the other side to be vulnerable, where we're so preconditioned not to show vulnerability that nobody wants to go first.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that picture of you at the dinner table on Christmas Day with your kids is like, I mean, think about, you've done it with so many, peers and so on social media, on LinkedIn, but even like for your kids, right? You said you have an 18-year-old boy, I think you said.
Yeah.
Like the behavior that you're modeling is a gift, right? I mean, I never had that gift. Again, I had many gifts from my parents. That was not one of them. The permission to do that was not one of them. And so I really do think it's so powerful. I wanted to look at the other side. So now it's February 4th. So you're, 6 weeks ish removed from.
Yeah. I'm going to see a doctor as soon as we're done this podcast to get hopefully approval to go surfing in Costa Rica next week. So yes.
So you need permission slips for surf trips now. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, honestly. It's not like I had doubts that I was on the right path around retiring, formally announcing my retirement. Like for a while it was, I'm on long-term sabbatical trying to figure out what I want to do next. Now I have confidence, I'm done with professional working full-time for the man, or whomever. I'm done with the rat race. I balance better than I balanced before my surgery. My face isn't lopsided. I've lost the hearing in my right ear. But if that's the worst thing that came out of this, I honestly look at the tumor, the experience of going through it, and some of the hardships I've gone through over the last couple of years, my knees, losing my job and restructuring, all of that stuff, they were all blessings. And they all came up at a time in my life when I kind of needed a bit of a sledgehammer over the head to say, get off the rat race train. Go focus on the things that are important. And, my wife and I are doing better. I love the conversations I'm having with my friends. I love the way I'm being helpful to people in my network who are trying to start companies, and I'm just being able to reach out and do things with them. I love the fact that I have time to meditate every day and be more thoughtful. I love the fact that I don't have stress associated with jobs and performance reviews and all of that stuff. Like, I'm in a really good place.
Yeah.
And I also know that life is a roller coaster and I'm in a really good place. And anytime something could come along and, it might change.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm trying to enjoy every single day I've got. And I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad I had wonderful surgeons, and I'm glad the surgery went well. And I'm trying to be grateful for that.
Well, it's beautiful. I'm so happy for you, man. And I'm grateful that we got connected through you sharing your story. I'm curious, when you say you're having all these coffees and people want to hear different angles, is there like a common theme, like a common set of questions that people are coming to you with, for your perspective on, or for your advice on?
There's a few. I think one of them is some reflections I've had just on how stressful the rat race was, how stressful it was to be for example, how stressful it was to work in a place like BCG, and the upper out culture, the performance review culture, and a lot of the stresses around being an insecure overachiever in a world of insecure overachievers. And me calling that out has actually had a bunch of people who I used to work with at BCG who have just kind of reached out and said, I never knew you felt that way too. I feel exactly that way. I'd love to talk a little bit more, because to know that you felt that way makes me feel a lot better about how I felt there. So I think that's one of them. The second one is, not surprisingly, a lot of friends who are kind of in my age and in my socioeconomic community are also trying to figure out, like, okay, when do I retire? What's enough? Have I accomplished everything I wanted to in my career? Will I be bored on the other side? Steve, you look like you kind of made a transition that's gone pretty well. Help me think through it.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be surprised, because 2 years ago, I was in the same place as many of them. But there are a lot of people in my community, not just geographic, but like in my socioeconomic community, who are wealthy by most global perspectives and who are deeply unhappy and uncertain about the future. And they don't like to talk about it, because it might show weakness. It might show, like, how can I be unhappy and ungrateful when I have all this wealth and all this, I've done so well. Like, how can I possibly be unhappy? And who wants to hear me bitch and gripe about how unhappy I am? And it's been remarkable, the number of people who have just said, can I just talk about how I feel? And like, have somebody who listens, who isn't going to judge them for it, but actually has empathy and understands it. And I'd say that's the second thing that's really come out kind of thematically in the different coffees I've been having.
Yeah. Wow. And I think it ties back to what we were talking about, being vulnerable, is people, and this is something my wife taught me, and I didn't realize this, and I'll speak for myself as an formerly insecure overachiever, is that, at the end of the day, what I've realized through, a lot of therapy, is that I just wanted people to see me. I wanted to be validated. I just wanted people to not even validate. I just wanted to be seen. And so all the activity and all the CrossFit and all the social media posting is all in service of this need to be seen. This
Yes.
desire to be seen. And the crazy thing about it all is that when you share your story vulnerably, you are actually helping people feel seen. And that's the thing that, I mean, I don't know if it's what we all want, but definitely this kind of strata of archetype, Enneagram 3, is
Yes.
the type that really struggles to be seen and validated. And so without even doing anything, even before the coffees and the follow-ups, just people being like, I think it's like one of the greatest gifts you can, or a great gift you can give to someone, is when they say to you, I thought I was the only person who felt that way.
Yes. Yeah. And the crazy thing, I fully agree. I want to be seen. I want to be validated. Most of my life has been about being seen and validated. Most of my father's life as a poor immigrant from Palestine to Canada was about being seen and validated in a new country that he had moved to. And that passed down to me. The most seen and validated I've felt in my life was in the last month and a half, since I started to put some of my really authentic thoughts out there. It was not winning a major deal and having everybody slap me on the back and saying good work or anything like that back when I was working. It's been opening up and showing who I am, how I really feel, and what's going on inside. I've never had such an outpouring of being seen, being valued, being validated, and people wanting to reciprocate and have deep conversations. And, going back 5-7 minutes, when you said, how are you feeling right now? And I said, I'm feeling great. It's partially because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Steve, you are courageous. You're inspiring. There's like a gentleness and like a quiet wisdom to everything that you say. And I gotta say, I mean, I always enter these conversations being like, like a little like, I gotta get it right. I gotta, do this and do that. And like, I'm totally, I'm like on a light cloud right now. I might as well be like a little bit high or something. So
I was nervous about this and I felt it went great. So thank you for guiding the conversation well.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your honesty, and you're 6 weeks or so removed from it all. I can't even wait to see what this conversation looks like in another 6 weeks, another 6 months, and then in another 6 years and beyond. So yeah, I just want to thank you for coming on the show and for just being super awesome, man.
Thank you. And a shout out to Nate for connecting us.
Yes.
He's the one that put this together. But
Yes.
yeah, thank you, Matt. And by discovering what you're doing, like I've dug into some of your podcasts and just love the message you're putting out there. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. And we'll link to your LinkedIn in the post that you wrote in the show notes. But anywhere else that you want people to go find you?
I might be posting some pictures of me trying to learn how to surf on a proper wave in Costa Rica. That won't go on LinkedIn. That'll most likely go on Instagram or something like that. And for now, it's LinkedIn, it's Instagram, it's Facebook. It's kind of your classic social media. But if this gets out there and people feel like they resonate and they want to just have a one-on-one conversation, like honestly, I'd love to do it. And I can put an email, you can put my email or phone number in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you.